Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Eagles capped off a huge comeback over the Rams in the wildest way possible. Also, Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears dominated the Cowboys. And what on earth happened to the Green Bay Packers?
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
The Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday were the definition of it's so over, we are so back, with the LA Rams set up to kick the potential game-winning field goal. The Eagles block the kick, and not only do they block the kick, they return it for a touchdown, and they steal a 33-26 win over the Rams in Philly. Louis DiBiase from Locked On Eagles joins me now, and Lou, I know that the blocked kick is going to change a lot about the way that both of these teams feel ultimately about all of this, but what was your biggest takeaway from this game for Philly?
I think for me, it was the passing game got the wake-up call they needed. I think they had to get smacked in the mouth like that in the first half. And honestly, that might have been the worst passing performance I've seen out of Philadelphia in 5 to 10 years. It was that bad, and they needed it. The second half, they had over 200 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. I just think they were playing scared. Last year, they played safe, smart, controlled aggression. This year, they've been playing scared. And when you have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert, that should not be the mentality, and I think they realized that today. I think that win will go down as the most important game of the season moving forward, because I just think that the style of offense they were playing the first 2.5 games, that wasn't going to win a Super Bowl, so they needed that kind of performance. A very Jekyll and Hyde one, but much needed.
Yeah, A.J. Brown in this one ends up with 6 catches for 109 yards and the touchdown. You mentioned the 3 Jalen Hurts touchdown passes, and this was a quarterback, Lou, that he'd taken a lot of heat. They were winning games, but Chris Jones had something to say last week at the end of that game. There was a lot of chatter in the media, national media, local media about, hey, he hasn't even gotten to 200 yards this season. What kind of questions did he answer for you?
I think for me, he proved what we've seen in the past, that when they do air it out and need him to play aggressive and to elevate the offense, this was a double-digit point comeback in the second half. Like, he can do this. I think he was starting to play like the player everybody said he was, a system, game managing quarterback. And today they needed more. And he reminded the league again, when they need him to do this, he can do it. I just think, again, he took it too far of thinking he doesn't have to do this as much as other quarterbacks.
So then, Lou, why don't they do it?
I think for me, last year, the way they won was by leaning on a historically great running attack, a number 1 ranked defense, and then opportunistic deep balls. But that can't work when you're only throwing for 100 yards and everybody knows you're only running the football. You have to be able to do both. So, again, I just think they've taken that identity a little bit too far to start the season. And again, there's a difference between playing smart and playing scared. And they just were not pushing the football downfield at all. So teams were putting 8 to 9 guys in the box, and that's why Saquon Barkley averaged under 3 yards a carry. So I think they needed this for the rest of the matchups, because defenses will now, I think, start to play them a little bit differently.
Okay, so let's say Philly does not block the kick.
Yeah.
And the kick, whatever happens, whether it's overtime or whether it's a field goal win. What is the story then today about the Eagles?
For me, I think it's the same. I think win or lose, that was the kick in the butt, the wake-up call that the offense needed, because the defense cannot carry you like it was doing through 3 games all season long with that kind of schedule if you're a one-trick pony on offense. So I think they had to have that kind of performance. And even if it was a loss, maybe that's even more impactful for the long term. So it's a great thing to get a win against a team that's going to be fighting you for the 1 seed in the NFC. But overall, the message was that Jekyll and Hyde performance in the passing game, I think, will change the season for the better.
Any concern about the defense? I mean, it was on track to be 29 points.
Yes.
You're giving up.
I'm very concerned about that third cornerback spot. I kept saying eventually this is going to hurt them in a really big spot, whether it's a Dory Jackson, Jacorian Bennett, or Keely Ringo. And on that final drive,
you don't even know who it is part of the problem.
Exactly. Right? That's the issue. And it's tough seeing Isaiah Rodgers, who they let go, had a historically great day in Minnesota. But Matt Stafford just kept picking on that side of the football field, and there was really nothing. They can't hide it in that kind of moment against Puka Nacua. So I think Howie Roseman's going to be looking out there to make maybe another trade, his 6th in a month, because that third cornerback spot's in a little bit of trouble.
You can stay up to date all year on the Philadelphia Eagles by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Eagles on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. You're Locked On Sports Today. Coming up, the Bears carved up the Cowboys. Before we get to that, the Colts smacked the Titans around in Nashville. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for the weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits how I like to bet. Player props, same-game parlays, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, and the best way to avoid having games where you might not be as locked in. I like to have a little bit more juice, a little bit more energy. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Daniel Jones and the Colts thrashed the Tennessee Titans 41-20 to improve to 3-0.
Your Indianapolis Colts are still undefeated after a 41-20 beatdown here on the road at Nissan Stadium. It was the Colts' first road game of the year. It was their first division game of the year. And they've got 3 wins now in the AFC. And, I mean, we're only 3 weeks in, but they are building a little bit of a postseason resume so far. Things are going to get pretty difficult next week, starting with the Rams. But we're going to focus on the here and now. It was another big day for Daniel Jones, another YPA over 9. More passer rating over 100. Jonathan Taylor goes over 100 with 3 touchdowns. Probably the player of the day over on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, the front did exactly what they needed to. They disrupted Cam Ward consistently. Got to him 4 times, which is, again, exactly what they needed to do. You saw a breath of fresh air with Latu getting in there, providing some pressures. Charvarius Ward getting back with some pass breakups. So this was yet again another huge team win for the Colts, offensively, defensively. Special teams, we'll see. You know, Spencer Schrader did miss a kick, so he's finally got a little bit of a blip on his record now. Rigoberto Sanchez has his first punt of the year now through the 3rd week of the season. So, again, Colts 3-0. Go ahead and catch the Locked On Colts Squad show. It's happening right now as we speak with my colleagues Zach, Derek, and Alan. And then, of course, through the week, we're going to break this all down to a more molecular level. So check us out, Locked On Colts on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts.
The Bucs, once again with these last-second heroics, they topped the Jets on a last-second field goal.
It wasn't pretty, but the Bucs found a way to win yet again. This cardiac Bucs team, who was up double digits in the 4th quarter, allow 2 touchdown drives by the Jets, and then a Chase McLaughlin field goal is blocked in return for a touchdown with less than 2 minutes left to put the Jets up 27-26. But Baker Mayfield, without Mike Evans on the field, is able to orchestrate yet another game-winning drive, a 36-yard field goal as time expired by Illinois legend Chase McLaughlin, who looks to have gotten things right after a bad couple of first games to start the season. The Bucs are now 3-0 for the first time since 2005, getting ready to square off against the 3-0 Philadelphia Eagles, who won off of a blocked field goal against the Rams. They didn't make it easy. They definitely didn't make it less stressful than the first 2 weeks, but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are now 3-0 on the season.
The Commanders dominated the Raiders in all 3 phases.
Big win for the Washington Commanders. They advanced to 2-1 after defeating a Vegas Raiders team. And look, it's going to be a team that everybody says the Washington Commanders, if you're a true contender, should be able to beat at home. But the bottom line is, at one point or another in this weekend's matchup, every phase of the Washington Commanders' offense, defense, and special teams, part of their operations, was on point, locked down, and dominant against the Raiders. Now, they still have some things to clean up, even more injuries to catch up with as the week goes on. But for now, the bad taste of week 2 is out of their mouth. They're back in the win column, and the Washington Commanders are feeling pretty good. We're going to cover even more on this game and everything else going on with the team over at the Locked On Commanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And over on the diamond, the Reds swept the Cubs to take 3rd place in the National League.
The The Cincinnati Reds are in a playoff spot, and they are in the driver's seat to take the last spot in the wild card. I am so pumped up. What's up? This is Jeff Carr from the Locked On Reds podcast, and the Cincinnati Reds have made doubters of us all, including myself. All season long, they've been putting themselves in situations where you're just like, there's no way they can dig themselves out of it. And here they are. The New York Mets have faltered even worse than what we saw the Cincinnati Reds doing. And now the Reds are in the final wild card spot with a tiebreaker over the Mets and 6 games left to play. Gritty baseball, 4-game sweep of those Chicago Cubbies. They win the season series over the Cubs. And now they head into 6 games, 3 at home, 3 on the road against divisional opponents that I've got good feelings about. This Reds team is getting hot at the very last moment, but you know what? That's the best time to do it. Get in on it, Reds country.
The Chicago Bears have been on a roller coaster over the last 6 or 8 weeks. It seemed like everything was great, and then it was all terrible, and then maybe it was good for a drive or two, and then it was terrible again. Hey, look, they beat the Cowboys. They beat the brakes off the Cowboys, a 31-14 win in Chicago. Caleb Williams throwing touchdown passes. Everyone's having fun, which, you know, we know how this goes then next week or the week after. Lauren Cox from Locked On Bears joins me now. And Lauren, this was as solid and thorough a butt kicking as the Bears have handed out in a while. How did they do it?
Yeah, it felt like this was the culmination of what we've been looking for this Ben Johnson offense to look like, where you're supposed to give Caleb Williams structure. There's 3 and 5 step drops with a hitch, timing where the ball is supposed to go on time, on target, and that can carry you for most of the game. And then on the plays when the offensive line breaks down or the receivers are covered and Caleb Williams needs to break that structure, you can let him be the playmaker outside of the pocket. And this felt like the first time where we really got both stacked up nicely at the same time, despite not having a running game really, or there's still some real questions up front on the offensive line.
I was going to ask about the running game, but it's almost unfair to ask about the running game in a day where Caleb Williams goes 19 for 28 for 298, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Is, as you told us before we jumped on here, 0 sacks, his first one of those. What was different about Caleb specifically, though, do you think?
I mean, I think a lot of it is going up against Matt Eberflus's defense that not only had struggled the week before, but he just knows it from last year. Yeah. I think there's a certain confidence of Caleb can trust his eyes and grip it and rip it and deliver. And then I think also
maybe some coaches on that Cowboys staff who may or may not have told Tyler Dunn from Go Long some things in that, you know, blockbuster series last week about Caleb Williams. There's a little bit of a revenge factor here too, right?
Absolutely. That has to have, I mean, they won't say it publicly, but that has to have played somewhat of a factor in here too. And then I think the absence of Micah Parsons on that Cowboys defensive line gave Caleb a lot of clean pockets to throw from. He had time to throw and was able to connect deep downfield. That was kind of the big thing. We hadn't seen him really show that progress on yet. He takes plenty of deep shots, but hasn't been able to really hone that in, but hit a couple to rookie Luther Burden and Roman Udze, of course, has been his kind of go-to target this season. And it just kind of felt like from a passing perspective, they really kind of checked all the boxes we've been waiting to see.
Yeah, they had 4 guys that caught passes over 30 yards in this game. That was the explosiveness we thought Ben Johnson was going to be able to interject in this offense. And I think, you know, if you're Caleb Williams, you go, if I can just hit a couple of these a game, like forget Ben Johnson said, I want him to be a 70% completion guy. Hold that off for a second. If you can create these explosives, which is what the Bears could not do for most of last season when Caleb could not find a deep ball, this feels like this is why you go get Colston Loveland. This is why you get Luther Burden and Rome Odunze.
And it's not only adding the explosives, but also cutting out the negatives. I mean, the no sacks thing we could talk about as an offensive line progress, but it's also a Caleb Williams progress.
Sure.
And how, you know, you can get away with, he was inaccurate on a couple throws. He had a couple at receivers' feet and 1 or 2 overthrown. Like, you can get away with the inconsequential mistakes as long as you don't have the negative plays that kind of cascade from there. And then of course you can then add on the big chunk plays. And all of a sudden, you know, that's the formula to a really fun quarterback performance.
Defensively, I think if you were a Cowboys fan, you're going, how did we only score 14 points in this game? Jalen Johnson out for the year, or at least out indefinitely. We'll see if there's a timeline on his return. This team is extremely banged up. The defense has not played well to this point. So what was different this week?
That's still hard to tell without going through the All-22 film. I think a couple things that stand out. One, Dennis Allen as defensive coordinator got a lot more aggressive with his fronts, and not that you're going to like confuse Dak Prescott necessarily, but it definitely gave this Cowboys offensive line some more trouble. I think we maybe underestimated how much those tackles would struggle. I mean, even Bears 6th-round pick Dominique Robinson got his first sack since 2022, just stepped right around the left tackle, beelined it to Dak Prescott for a sack. So like a bad Cowboys offensive line performance made this Bears pass rush look better than it has been. And then CeeDee Lamb getting hurt also was a big difference. George Pickens and Jake Ferguson just couldn't really do it themselves. One of Prescott's interceptions hit George Pickens in the hands. He drops it, and Tremaine Edmonds dives under it for the interception.
Stay up to date all year on the Chicago Bears by subscribing to Locked On Sports today and Locked On Bears on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, the Green Bay Packers imploded against the Browns. The Green Bay Packers absolutely imploded against the Cleveland Browns yesterday. I reacted to the loss in our Locked On Packers postgame coverage, calling it the worst loss in the regular season, at least, of the Matt LaFleur era. The Packers blew a 10-point fourth quarter lead, had a kick blocked in the final seconds, and then allowed a terrible offense to walk right down the field on them, get into field goal range, and they lose to the Cleveland Browns 13-10. This game falls squarely on the shoulders of Matt LaFleur. And it is unfortunately the second time in, let me do the math, 4 regular season games where I have said this is the worst loss in the regular season for the Matt LaFleur era. Because the Chicago Bears in week 17 last year, I said the same thing because of the way that game ended. This wasn't just how the game ended, because and we can count that game. We are now counting that game, right? This game is worse because you had Jordan Love the whole game. We'll get to him. Oh, we will get to him. You played Josh Jacobs. You needed to win this game early in the season. And you did not show up ready to play from the beginning. And I got sick of hearing from the announcers how scared of Myles Garrett Matt LaFleur was. I've never been so cognizant game planning around one player as I am this week. This team showed up scared to compete. Matt LaFleur coached scared in this football game. They win the toss early in the season, take the football. This game, we'll defer. We'll defer in the second half. Even though if you go up 7-0, you are putting an enormous amount of pressure on an offense that cannot score. And so it's right from the rip where you're seeing a lack of aggressiveness. And then it was every play had to be quick game. Now, the penalties didn't help, but the penalties are part of the problem. We talked about this with Jags on our Friday show. The penalties were killers in this game. 14 penalties. You cannot go on the road in the NFL and win with 14 penalties. Jordan Morgan, 3rd and 4 in the scoring position, false start. Now it's 3rd and 9. You don't convert. 3rd and 1. 3rd and 1. You have a false start. Now it's 3rd and medium instead of 3rd, and this is easy. You just did not show up ready to play at all. The details were bad. The effort was horrible. There was that the Njoku play is the perfect encapsulation of that. Early in the season, the first 2 games of the season, there would have been 5 more hats to the ball. You got Quay Walker and another defender wrapping up Harold Fannin Jr. Sorry, it was Fannin. And Evan Williams and Keyshawn Nixon just watched. They just watched. Okay? It would have been a game where you rallied to the football. That's what they were doing in week 1. That's what they were doing in week 2. That's not what they did in this game. They never came out like they had to take this game seriously. That's how they approached it. That's how they played it. like they could just show up. And this was the problem. And I said this all week. I've said this in the offseason. I said this last year. There were too many games last year they thought they could just show up and win. Too many games where they felt like they could just walk on the field and be okay. You have to bring it every single week. And we talked about it. We talked about it all week. Now, were there penalties that were ridiculous that led to points? Yes, absolutely there were. I thought the penalty that set up the touchdown was terrible. Multiple penalties. The Packers were lucky to only give up the field goal when they gave up the field goal. Lucky that a chop block set them back because two terrible defensive pass interference and a holding and a DPI call that were bad set those up. Now, then there was the touchdown, the Keyshawn Nixon or the Evan Williams DPI. That was also a pretty soft call, but the game can't come down to those calls. This is a game you expect to win comfortably, that you had a comfortable lead. You had a comfortable lead in this game. You have a double-digit lead, a 2-score lead. You get outscored in the fourth quarter 13-0 by the Cleveland Browns. What are we talking about? And finally, Baker Mayfield had more than just a win on his mind in Tampa Bay's thriller over the Jets. The Bucs quarterback delivered his third straight game-winning drive to open the season, all while leading a shorthanded offense, missing key linemen and receivers. The victory also carried a bit of personal satisfaction, with Mayfield pointing out post-game that Jets defensive coordinator Steve Wilks was the coach who cut him from the Panthers in 2022. Add it all up, and the Bucs have quietly become the fourth team since the 1970 merger to win 3 straight games with a score in the final minute. For Mayfield, the redemption tour rolls on. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up, the Lions and Ravens square off in a juicy Monday night matchup. So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.